All right, we got Nick Riley here again for phase two. We touched on the initial assessment of your health and wealth in the previous podcast and video. If you're watching this on YouTube, now we're going to dive into low hanging fruit because you might have done the assessment and you might have panicked because you're like, holy cow, I am so far from where I thought I was. Right. And that's something that we all deal with in so many different areas. We're like, I thought I was doing great. We have our own identity, we have our own reality. And unfortunately, real reality doesn't always line up. But never fear, there's a lot of different things that you can do right now, today, to start building some momentum so that you can start on this journey and start working towards whatever it is that goal that you have set for yourself. So, Nick, I'll let you dive into low hanging fruit on your end for finances. I'll dive into low hanging fruit on my end, and then we'll tell people where they can find the second downloadable PDF to be able to start knocking these things out.
Yeah, perfect. Well, yeah, I'm excited to be back for phase two. So, as mentioned in the assessment in phase one, the spending aspect I think is worth touching back on again. Really understanding what level of spending you have on a monthly basis is going to be critical for making any progress financially. So, that with that being said, the other aspect is some of the most valuable resources is our time and our attention. And well, how can we gain back more time and gain back more attention in our life to live a life with more purpose? Well, I look at automation and simplification as two ways of really earning back more time and earning back more of our attention. And you can automate all aspects of your life financially. So I'll touch on savings first. The most critical part in really getting to a point of building up your net worth is to pay yourself first. And that concept came from The Richest Man in Babylon. It's one of the oldest personal finance books. It's kind of written as a poor person in uh, like Mesopotamia and Babylon, and he learns these great things from a rich person in Babylon, and that is essentially paying yourself first. So that is critical, and you can automate that process. So from straight from your paycheck into a separate savings account, automate that as much as possible. People tend to spend whatever they see in their bank account. So ideally, having it separate from something that you're checking on a daily basis, allowing that to continue to build up. The other aspect is for optimizing your employer benefits. So all of your employer benefits can be automated. At a complete minimum, you should be contributing up to your employer match, whether that's 3, 4, 5%, depending on your employer. If you have a employee stock purchase plan or a ESPP, being able to maximize that is critical in that next phase. And if you still have money to left over to be able to afford to set aside for savings, then maxing out your 401k or your 403b if you work for a public institution. And then beyond that, maxing out your annual IRA contributions. So you can either do that at the beginning of the year, a full $6,000 per year, or just do $500 a month and have that automated. And that'll equate to the 6,000 over the course of the year. The other thing to automate is your investing. So everyone's trying to outpace the market or get involved in crypto and and check their balances on a daily basis. But the old tried and true method of building your wealth is going to be through automating your investing and diversifying across a large different asset classes. So I'm going to give you a little secret today. Easiest way to do that is through target date funds, and you're going to have that in your 401k plan. Vanguard has them, and so do other providers. But a target date fund essentially allocates your money, diversifies it across both domestic or national stocks and international stocks, as well as some bonds, depending on your age. But as you approach that target date, which ideally is your retirement age, so it's typically paid to age 65. So if you're born in 1990, having a 2055 target date will adjust your allocation as you get closer to that date. and make it more conservative as you get closer to retirement. So that's just an easy way to invest and have your money working for you without you having to really think about it. If you want to get a little bit more fancy, you can just use a Vanguard total stock market fund. I have 65% in that, and that could be in the ticker symbol VTI, VTI. So that's the Vanguard total stock market ETF. And then the remaining amount, say 35% in Vanguard total international stock, and that's VXUS. And you could just use those two investments, and that can be your entire stock allocation. So that's one way to really automate that portion of your investing. The bill pay side is the other aspect, making sure that your credit card statements are being paid in full every month. I think a lot of people fall into the trap of paying their minimum amount due, which ends up rolling over their statement balance to the following month, and they start accumulating interest on those credit cards. I do believe that people should be spending on a credit card, at least money that they have. That way they're racking up points. And as we mentioned in phase one, that is a great tool to understand where your money is going. Data does not lie. When you're able to pull up all the transactions from your credit card statement, you're going to know where your money is going and whether or not it aligns to your values for what you want in your life. So, how to pay credit cards, having fixed payments towards rent and utilities.
One question I have on that with the credit cards, the credit score, right, is going to help credit cards from what I understand, right? Or yeah, your credit score is going to be helped by having credit and having things that are, they have a track record of you paying things.
Mm-hmm.
Is that another reason to be spending on a credit card versus just paying all cash or not using one?
Definitely. Yeah. So any time, so there's good debt and bad debt. Bad debt is buying an asset that is going to depreciate or go down in value. Good debt is buying an asset that is going to appreciate in value, like real estate, for example. And whenever you apply for a loan, they're going to require that credit score. And a large part of that credit score is, how consistently are you paying off your statement balance every month? And another big part of the credit score is your credit utilization rate. Your credit utilization rate is basically how much on average per month are you using out of your total amount of credit. So one credit card might have a $10,000 balance of credit that you're given. So if you have 3 credit cards, say that's 30,000 in credit, but you spend less than $10,000 a month. So that would equate to less than 30% of a credit utilization rate. And ideally for your credit score, keeping that credit utilization rate below 30% will improve your credit score. If you're always maximizing the amount of credit you have each month, and even if you're paying that down, because you're utilizing all of that credit on a monthly basis, that will actually ding your credit score.
That's an insider tip. I've actually never heard that. So
yeah, so it actually pays to have multiple credit cards as long as have multiple credit cards open, and ideally without an annual fee if you're not using that credit card. But the more lines of credit you have open and aren't fully utilizing, it's actually going to improve your credit score.
cool. So would that be with the same bank, or would the idea be different banks, different like tiers of credit cards?
Yeah. So, I like to spread it across multiple banks and institutions. The other aspect to your credit score is the age of that credit. So if you open a fresh new credit card, it's not going to be a mature, like they're not going to have history of you making, consistent payments on that. The longer your history and track record of having those lines of credit, whether that's a, mortgage, a credit card, you name it, that's going to improve your overall credit score. So, you listen to people like Dave Ramsey or your others that say, "Oh, don't spend on a credit card." That's not correct. You should be spending on a credit card at least money that you already have. So do not spend money that you don't have on a credit card. That's a whole nother probably episode that we can dive into.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
then from a savings account standpoint too,
Mm-hmm.
I know there's ones that have higher interest rates, lower interest rates, higher fees, lower fees. Is there any that you like?
Yeah, so this is also a topic that is top of mind right now, just with anticipated inflation, interest rates in savings accounts are super low. I think a year and a half ago, yeah, a high yield savings account might give you 1%, whereas now they're high yield is like 0.4%, which is barely nothing, and it's not going to keep up with inflation. So unfortunately, if you need the money in the short term, there aren't great alternatives right now to keeping your cash. There are some, if you're willing to take the risk and not have the FDIC insurance, there are, and I'm going to have a lot more content on this here shortly, ways of staking a stable coin. So this is all cryptocurrency terms. I don't want to get into it too deep into this podcast, but there are ways, alternative ways to keep cash for a much higher interest rate that is not FDIC insured, but highly insured on the back end and pretty safe.
Yeah, I'm actually familiar with a couple of those, so I'll be interested to see what you have from a content standpoint. But again,
Yeah,
totally different podcast
yeah,
and
yeah. I
content.
mean, the easy ones. Ally Bank has a good, high yield, quote unquote, high yield. Discover Bank has a good high yield savings account. But keep in mind, a high yield savings account these days is still, you're not going to get 1%, and CDs aren't going to pay well either. So, short term cash, it's definitely a growing topic and area of concern for my clients.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And so the other low hanging fruit is really, on building up those savings, really building that emergency fund. I think having an emergency fund, we talked about the sleep at night factor in our last episode in phase one. Having an emergency fund in place will protect you from having to spend on a high interest credit card. When something goes wrong, if you become disabled or you have a workplace accident and aren't able to work, or you get let go, uh, there's numerous factors that can happen, and you want to make sure you have money on hand in order to provide for your living expenses on a monthly basis. So that's where knowing your monthly spending is critical, and then finding out. So you want to target 3 months of living expenses on hand if you are a dual income household. So you can have less months on hand because you have multiple lines of income. So if the chances of both of you losing a job or both of you becoming disabled in a dual income household is much lower. So you can afford to have less cash on hand and have the rest invested. You want to target 6 months at least of living expenses on hand if you're a single income earner, because if you lose your job, that all falls on you, and you don't want to have to dip into your investments at an inopportune time to be able to fund your lifestyle needs. And obviously, you want to target more months of savings if you do plan on taking a sabbatical or anticipate a larger purchase in the near future, or anticipate a higher level of spending and an increase in lifestyle needs. So if you're planning on buying a home, you want to make sure you have more cash on hand because your overall lifestyle expenses will be increasing in the short term.
Does that change based on maybe like job industry? Like, are there going to be jobs where you're like, hey, maybe you're higher up in a company, it's going to take you a
Mhm.
while to land a job, versus if you're younger in your career, everyone needs an account coordinator. Does that change at all?
Yeah, it does, and it changes for W-2 earners versus a 1099 employee who might have inconsistent income. So you work in a restaurant or you're a freelancer of some sort, you might have inconsistent, or real estate agent in sales, you might have inconsistent earnings on a monthly basis. Having a larger emergency fund in place allows you to more easily kind of round off those living expenses and have that on hand. So the more volatile or variable your income is, or the riskier that job is to potentially getting let off based on your employer, you're going to want to have more cash on hand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
get a little nuance.
yeah, definitely. And so the last portion of low hanging fruit, and I know you were going to talk about this too, is just developing that money mindset and really growing and expanding your mind to increase your net worth and earning potential. So, some of the books that I like to recommend are Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Kind of the whole concept behind that is what you can conceive and believe. you can achieve. So really developing a mental picture of where you want to be in your life. I'll share my own personal example. Uh, a vision that I try to meditate around consistently. I love the water, and I'm at peace on a lake, on a river. So my picture is a lake house that I want to own someday. I I can smell the coffee I have in the morning. I can feel the grass as I walk barefoot to the dock. I can feel the temperature of the water when I jump in. I can feel what it feels like to start the boat up and go for a morning wakeboarding or wake surfing run. Uh, so I really alert all my senses around that vision. And I encourage everyone to you know, build up a vision for what they want to work towards and embody that and become that successful person that they want to become. And I think a lot of that falls under, the habits that you perform on a daily basis. So Atomic Habits by James Clear is also another great book that you can read or listen to, however you prefer to take in that information. But he really takes the Power of Habit, which is another book that touches on more of the science behind habits. And James Clear in Atomic Habits just makes it more practical and provides more implementation techniques to really adopt the right habits and remove the bad habits in your life.
Yeah, that's actually a book I was going to recommend. His newsletter is also really
It's
good.
great. Yeah. The 3-2-1.
3-2-1. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um,
Oh,
dude,
and lastly, too, just while it came to mind, the One Thing by Gary Keller. That is probably one of my favorite books, if not my my first favorite, I should say. Uh, it's all tackles the 80-20 principle and takes it to a different level. So, what are the activities that you can do today to produce a majority of the result that you're trying to get to? So, in the 80-20 principle, for those of you not familiar with it, if you're wanting to learn a language, what are the 20% of the words or the vocabulary in that language that will get you 80% of fluency? And you can use that for your health, your wealth, all aspects of your relationship, every aspect of your life.
yeah, the other thing I really like about that book and that concept is if you do 10 different things, you do nothing, right? You end
Yep.
up going nowhere. So having that one goal, and that's where I kind of have the triangle of goals where it's like, where are we working towards? Try to keep in mind, like, where it is that we're going when you
Yeah.
get 6 months in and you want to change direction because you got to focus on that one thing. And then to that other point about, you know, 80-20, so many people in health want to major in the minor. And what that means is they're caught up on, hey, should I get this supplement or that supplement?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, supplement is a word that is meant to augment the healthy habits and lifestyles that you're already doing. So worrying about protein powders, but not having, a good sleep or not working out consistently, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So get the 80-20 down. Really good stuff. Anything else you wanted to add before we shift
Just
gears?
another thing that comes to mind as a low hanging fruit item is, and this is something that we can relate to on a health basis too. Every once in a while we need to go through a detox. I think not only a nutritional detox or an elimination diet of some sort or whatever, just getting back to ground zero and going through a spending detox or cleanse. So going through a 10-day period of a very low spend or and really reassessing what you are spending money on and what are aspects that you can remove from your consistent spending habits that aren't really adding value to your life overall. So going through a spending cleanse, I've known people to remove all spending minus the essentials and then slowly add back. So like remove all your subscriptions and then slowly add back the ones that you want to have. And what a lot of people find is like they actually save money by removing those subscriptions and then just paying one off. Pay for the one movie. Pay for the one day in the gym or hot yoga or whatever, rather than the membership that they weren't showing up to. So that way you're still making progress towards your goals and your values, but also saving money in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. getting to a point to where you're like, man, I should really just get a subscription is when you should get a subscription or a membership versus,
Hmm.
oh, I might use that. Let me get a subscription. Right.
Yeah.
If you're like, I've gone to the gym 3 months straight, like I should get a subscription here. Obviously that's not a good
Yeah.
example. It's just like a hyperbole, but um,
Yeah. Well,
that's a good one.
there's also something to like, that's why like I think higher price consulting and coaching actually holds people accountable. They're like, oh, I've paid this amount. Uh, and one thing that I know, if say I'm just lacking a great example right now, but something that really irritates you with like a friend or something, maybe a sports team. If you hate the New York Yankees, you are going to contribute $500 to their program or something if you don't meet this financial goal or this health goal. And it's something, oh, you do not want to do, or and it motivates you enough to hold you accountable to follow through with that. And then money has the same. Money does talk. Being able to pay for a subscription will force you to want to use it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good dichotomy there. And 100%, I think I would add to all this is just low hanging fruit is investing into something or someone that'll help you and keep you accountable, right?
Yeah.
Because if you haven't been able to cross a bridge on your own, nothing changes if nothing changes. You might imply, what's the word I'm looking for? Implement all of these
Implement.
habits.
Yeah.
I'm just going down the dictionary.
Yeah.
IMPL. Yeah, you might implement all these habits, but the missing key is there hasn't been this energy transference, and money has energy. And until you really make that commitment, you maybe need to reassess how committed you are to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Sweet. So now I'll dive into my low hanging fruits, things that people can do today to improve their health. And I'll go through the same lens of training, nutrition, recovery, and mental performance. From a training standpoint, the biggest mistake that I'll see people make is just the randomness, random inputs, random outputs. You go to the gym, what should I do? It's almost like you're walking into a mall and where should we go next? And unless you have a plan, and even if it's not a perfectly customized, dialed in plan, the plan that you follow to a T or really consistently, even if it's written by a squirrel, is going to be better than the plan written by an Olympic powerlifting coach that you don't follow, right? So know that consistency and effort is going to trump it 9 times out of 10. Obviously, we want to optimize and make sure that it fits your body, fits your lifestyle, fits exercise selection, all of that stuff. But having some sort of plan. Part two to that is tracking the weight that you're doing. So how are you supposed to know if you're progressing and getting better if there's no benchmark for that, right? If you know that you can squat 100 pounds or 200 pounds or 300 pounds, you can say, I got stronger when it says 130, 230, 330. And so having some form of tracking and then knowing that the goal, if you want to get stronger, is to progress, not stay in your comfort zone. And I'll use a kind of work analogy for this. So many people will find a weight that they really like, that they feel really comfortable with. And like, yeah, that was hard. That was good. And in work, you would never say, hey, like, I like this job. I mean, you do get to a point to where like maybe this is like, makes sense for you, but the goal is to get promoted. The goal is to earn more. But if you stay in your comfort zone, you'll never get promoted. So if you don't try and progress weight or progress intensity, you'll never get promoted to actually getting stronger. Right. And I
Yeah.
like using that with people who are constantly like, yeah, I hit my 135 on the bench and like, that's good. That's good for me. And when reality, they just got this little mental governor on themselves that they're not allowing themselves to push themselves, potentially fail. And that's a thing I would say right away is like, if you want to find how, like what your strength levels are, go and fail in like a 5 rep test and then see what you're actually capable of. Because now when you're holding back and when you're actually pushing yourself.
Yeah. And I think having a spotter when it comes to bench press, it's amazing how much more you lift with just that mental note of knowing that they can kind of relieve you. And even if they're not even assisting on the bench, I find it for me, I always end up lifting way more.
Yeah. Pretend that Michael B. Jordan or your favorite actress or model is watching you and counting your reps and telling you one more. You will
Yeah.
find another rep in the tank. I guarantee you.
I still can't be the guy in the gym that just like grunts really, really loud. I can't get myself to do that, but there is some science to it.
I would love to see that. I know there, you do get a good, um, what's the word I'm looking for?
Pump.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, you get a good pump and it is like, you know that you let everything out when involuntary sounds are coming out of you. That's
Yeah.
maybe another angle. Um, this one is a little bit less obvious, but start walking. If you listen to part one, I talked about non-exercise activity thermogenesis, NEAT for short. Get your body moving. Move, 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 move. Go for walks, go for hikes. If your significant other wants you to take out the trash, walk around the block and take out the trash. Like, do whatever you can to find more movement in your day rather than slowing down. Because from a mobility standpoint, a movement quality standpoint, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so this is where playing a bunch of different sports or doing something like yoga or jujitsu or something that stretches your movement capacity so that you have access to different ranges and different movements, that's going to be something that you'd want to start doing now. One thing that can happen is you get really dogmatic in your training, in your way of thinking, and then your body really only moves along those tracks. And so that's something that I would do with someone is either create a program, and this is what I'll do is I'll create a program that addresses all those movement patterns, or I'd say, hey, do what you like, but 1 or 2 times a day, like go and do something that's completely different.
Yeah, and I think that's really helped me too. In you making that recommendation to me, I'm no longer like able to go to the rec center for 4 hours on a daily basis like I did in college and play basketball. I I have to get up more frequently throughout the day, and I think taking phone calls that you know aren't going to be video Zoom calls, just being able to take those on the go, listen to Audible, listen to podcast. Uh, I mean, get a dog. A dog will get you outside walking a lot more too.
Financial advice right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, cool. So then
Dogs
from
do
your,
come with a excess cost, so I will throw in that disclaimer.
yeah, this is not financial advice. This
Yeah,
is movement advice. That's really funny. Next, we'll jump into nutrition. So I talked about the assessment. You're going to want to track and see where you're at. That's to know where you're at and get a starting spot, starting point. Track longer. Track for 6 months, and you will be amazed at how much awareness you get about what comes in certain foods, how your body feels with foods, what habits you had that weren't aligned with the goals that you have, right? Because the biggest thing is, oh, I didn't realize that that box of cereal was 12 servings of 200 calories. I didn't realize that organic potato chips were still potato chips, and marketing isn't going to, negate the fact that it's still 200 calories a serving, right? So being able to understand what's coming in, understand what's coming out. So just by tracking, I've had so many clients. I think my dad's lost 30 pounds. All he's done is tracked his weight and tried to move more.
yeah,
And trust me, there's a lot more that you can do if you have bigger goals, and that doesn't work for everyone. But the simple habit of stepping on the scale every single day and being like, it's going down. I should continue what I'm doing, or it hasn't moved in 2 weeks. I can pull back on a couple things. Again, there's more nuance to that, but just having some sort of way of tracking and accountability nutritionally is going to be huge.
yeah. And I
Drinking
found too after starting to track my food intake, I found out that there's certain foods that I eat on a typical basis, whether that's nuts, peanut butter, just Greek yogurt. They have more calories than I thought they did, and even on the nutrition facts, I mean, 4 Oreos might be 190 calories. I don't know what it is offhand, but
yeah,
whoever eats just four Oreos.
crazy people, you can't trust them.
Yeah, yeah,
Can't trust them. Um, there's one other thing I wanted to touch on to that point with tracking. Oh, there's a big push in, again, social media, intuitive eating or just going with what your body knows. And I'll use finance as an example. If you're $30,000 in debt, intuitive spending is not a good strategy for you because your intuition and your habits has put you $30,000 in debt. If you have really bad health, intuitive eating is not going to get the result that you want. Your intuition, your habits, your subconscious patterns have put you in this hole. So if you just spend some time retraining your intuition, which is your pattern recognition system of your subconscious, then you can go into intuitive eating. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good to be had around, oh, I had this food, it made me feel this way. I'm hungry, I should eat, right? You don't want to be really rigid on the other side of the extreme, but taking time to educate yourself for 6 months to a year, realize that that is 1 year or half a year even. It's less than 1% of your life to improve the
Yeah,
rest of your life.
exactly. And I think we both talk about that marathon mindset too. I know when I hate to run personally, I'd rather get my cardio playing basketball of some sort. But if I am running out for a jog, the first 5, 10 minutes is always the hardest. And once I get past that phase, running becomes much easier. And the same thing goes for tracking your nutrition, tracking your finances. It does take some time up front to get a good understanding. But once you gain that awareness and understanding of where you're at and where you want to go, it just becomes slowly more and more easier over time.
Yep. Uh, Two quick ones. Drink more water. You probably don't drink enough water. There's a varying degree to the number of ounces that you need. A good barometer starting spot is half your body weight in ounces. If you are getting that and your pee is still brown, drink more water. If you aren't getting that and your pee is really clear, you're probably fine. You can use that quantitative measure or qualitative measure. Like if your urine looks really yellow or brown, drink more water. If it's pretty clear or kind of yellow, you're good. Don't need to overthink that too much, but water can be really helpful keeping you
So
hydrated.
Paul, a quick question on that. So my grandma always used to tell her, you got to drink more water. And she's like, well, I drink, 4 cups of coffee. And does coffee count as water intake? Does juice count as water intake? Or does it have to be pure water?
Doesn't have to be pure water, right? Because there is water in it, but it's one of those things where you can trim the fat, I guess is what I would say, right? If you're getting your 100 ounces of water a day through coffee, you can have much bigger problems than dehydration, right? If you're
Hmm.
drinking your 100 ounces of water through orange juice, you're also getting another 800 calories of OJ. So I don't have like the exact science on that, but just trim the fat, drink the water, and kind of separate those things.
Yeah.
Um, Protein. That's the first low hanging fruit that I see with a lot of people. Getting your protein to around a gram per pound of body weight. For some people is really easy. For some people is really tough. But protein has so many benefits from a training standpoint. You obviously need protein in order to lay down muscle tissue. It is, I mentioned earlier, the thermic effect of food. It is going to require the body more calories to break and burn protein and fiber than it would carbohydrates and fat. Think of it as like you got a big dump and it's got to break down all the trash. And if the body is breaking down fats, that's like plastic, where it's like, yeah, it's easy. Doesn't really require a lot of energy. Carbohydrates are like wood or twigs. It's like, all right, I got to work a little bit harder. Protein is like stone, and the dump is going to have to work overtime to turn through
Yeah.
all that. It's also going to help because it takes more time to digest. It's going to help keep you full longer. So in a deficit, if you're trying to lose weight, higher protein is going to be more satiating and is going to reduce any hunger that you have. And for the little detail here, it's actually more important for women. And I'll see a lot of women actually undereat protein more so than men. Sometimes guys will just grow up in, bro culture of protein powder and eating chicken and rice. But women, because as they get older, their hormones will change and you start to lose muscle. Protein is essential not only when you're younger to building muscle up as high as you can get that, but then also holding on to and retaining muscle because the body is going to break down energy through fat, through muscle tissue, or through blood sugar or stored muscle glycogen. So if you have maybe, let's say, you don't really focus on strength training, you don't really have a lot of protein, and you get to 50 years old at, let's just say, 30 portions of muscle, Well, now it's declining from 30, 28, 26, 24. Versus if you're able to get up to 60, you've got a much higher starting spot. And coming back to that idea of getting off the toilet at 90 and not needing support, the term is called sarcopenia. As you lose and break down muscle tissue, you are getting weaker, right? So if you can get that point up as high as possible and keep protein up as high as possible, you are mitigating that decline.
Yeah.
So lots of benefits to protein there.
Remember the movie Wall-E, where they're all going around in a futuristic world, and I wonder what those humans were eating. I mean, they weren't being active. They couldn't walk on their own. They probably couldn't get off the toilet on their own.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely more than 4 Oreos.
yeah, definitely.
Cool. So that's from a nutrition standpoint. And there's so many other things. And this is part where the assessment comes in. If, I see something or you notice something in your assessment, you're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. There's other low hanging fruits. We're just going general here. And what I see across hundreds of people. Next, so we'll go to recovery, some sort of sleep routine. And it's not just, oh, I'll try to go to bed at this time. I have an alarm that goes off at 8 p.m. every night, drives my girlfriend crazy. But that signals the same way you have an alarm that starts your morning routine. That signals to me, okay, we need to start turning off devices. We need to start meditating. We need to start reading. Whatever that is for you, creating some sort of sleep routine to wind yourself down. Because what happens when you are super wound up, whether that's you're super stressed at work or you work out at 7 p.m. or you don't spend time winding down just for whatever reason, there's two parts of your nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic. You're going to sleep when you are in your parasympathetic. You're going to be in your fight or flight in your sympathetic. If you don't have that step ladder down into the parasympathetic, you're going to really struggle with sleep. So having some sort of routine that gets you into that, and it might be different for every people. This is where I love that book, Atomic Habits, because they'll talk about habit linking. Hopefully you brush your teeth before you go to bed. Link some sleep hygiene habits right after that, right? So you brush your teeth and then boom, you grab your book, or you wash your face and then boom, you go and meditate. Having some sort of sleep routine and setting a time for when devices turn off, it's going to be huge to cleaning up sleep. If you do have any mobility issues that come up in an assessment, addressing those on off days and training days, but addressing those specifically on off days is going to help there. Interestingly enough, I talked about walking and training. Walking is also a recovery tool because you're able to, on an off day, get a lot of blood flow, get a lot of movement. It is going to be parasympathetic until you really start to like huff and puff and get going. But that can be something that is a lot more of a recovery day. Whereas people are like, oh, I'm not lifting. Let me go and do a 6-mile run. That's putting you into your sympathetic. That is going to be more costly to your joints. Not to say that it's like, don't go for a run. That's not what I'm saying at all. But walking is going to be a great recovery tool. It's also a great movement tool. If you like massages or cryo or any of those things, absolutely you can get those scheduled on a bi-weekly, weekly, monthly, whatever basis that you want. But I call them parasympathetic inputs, and something that helps get you into a relaxed, chill state, whatever it is. For me, I'll play light Legos. I'll go to the driving range, just something that gets my mind out of all the shit. That's something that you can do from a recovery standpoint.
Yeah, and I've heard people just, having their kind of safe place, whether that is, imagine themselves camping up in the mountains or laying on the beach and listening to the waves, being able to visualize yourself in those, kind of mentally safe places that calm you down will get you calm throughout the day in between stressful meetings that you might have at work or whatever.
Yeah. And I would be very upset with myself if I did not address breath work and doing some sort of breathing practice to help drive your nervous system down out of those stressed out states. Again, before bed, before a big meeting, after a workout, taking time to focus on an exhale dominant pattern. So 4-second inhale, 6-second exhale, 2-second inhale, 4-second exhale. Something that is going to be exhale dominant will stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system and will get you with a much lower heart rate, with a much more clear mind, thinking logically, rationally, with the executive part of your mind, versus if you're just constantly inhaling, right? You can see how that hypes you up, right? And that obviously puts you in a much more of a fight or flight state.
Yeah, I know there's lots of different types of breathing techniques. I love the Wim Hof method, and really those deep inhales and hard exhales, repeated over time, and then holding that breath. Letting I don't know the science behind it. Maybe Paul, you can explain that. But yeah, I feel just rejuvenated after a session of the Wim Hof breathing technique, and yeah, the cryotherapy, just taking a cold shower in the morning or after a workout definitely kind of refreshes you.
Yeah, but I've thrown a lot of things at you guys in terms of things that you can start, but just pick one. Just pick one thing to start doing and make that your goal for the entire week, and just have a little calendar, have a little marble that you put in a jar that just gives you that feedback as to this habit I've done, this habit I've done, this habit I've done. And then last but not least, mental performance. So talked about all the different things you can look at from meditation. So apps that I love, you have Insight Timer, Headspace, Calm. There's a bunch of others out there, but those are the ones that I've used, those ones that I recommend to clients. And there's plenty of different ways to get into it. You can listen to a guided meditation. You can listen to relaxing music, visualize. You can do some breath work with the music. So don't think that you need to do it a specific way. Find something that works for you, and then be diligent and practiced with it. If I started piano today, I would be trash. Don't expect to be an amazing meditator that can clear your mind and levitate like Yoda, in 2 days. Then from a journal standpoint, I got my journal right here. Next Level Journal is one that I've been really loving lately. They have so many different journals that you can go on Amazon, and just a way to organize your day, organize your thoughts, having some sort of gratitude affirmation practice, knowing what action items that you have. Um, and from a work standpoint, you'll have, hey, here's the 3 critical tasks that I need to do. If you're looking at your day, you should have, hey, here's the 4 critical tasks I need to do for my health. I need to do my training. I need to do my nutrition goal that I have. I need to do my recovery goal that I have. And I need to carve out time for meditation, for journaling, or books. Podcasts is another really good one. From a book standpoint, I love Atomic Habits. I love One Simple Thing. I really like Alchemist as just a way to wrap your head around a journey that you are never going to. It's not that you don't get off, but it's unique to everyone, and you see a lot of things in it, in the struggle along the journey. And then Turning Pro is actually one that I did as a book club with a bunch of clients, where there's this concept of the amateur to the pro, and the amateur runs into all of these obstacles. So fear of failure, fear of success, distractions, self-sabotage, alcohol, like all these things that you cling to because you're addicted to them, because it keeps you safe and doesn't require you to make that leap into being a pro in your health. Or obviously, if like you and I own businesses, we need to make that transition from spending a bunch of time on social media to knocking out the work that we need to do, right? That's the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And then trying to see if I have any other books. No other books. Podcasts, there's a ton. I'm not going to list off a ton. Obviously, this podcast you're listening to, it's a great one if you want to learn. But find either an author that you really like or a social media person that you like. There's a ton of podcasts out there. I know you have a podcast too as well. But
Yeah.
whatever it is that you want to learn, go and listen to that podcast, listen to that person talk, listen to how they see the world in their perspective, and you're going to start to think and see the world like them. I'm really trying to work on leadership as I start to build out a team. So I'm listening a lot to Jocko podcast, as he's one of the forefront leaders in the world
He's great.
at
Yeah.
at communication and strategy with leading. And I'm mind blown every single time I listen to the podcast, because I'm like, wow, I never would have thought of that. And had I run into that situation without any con concept of what was coming and how to approach it, I would have totally butchered it. Right. And so it's the idea of expensive experience versus inexpensive experience. Expensive experience is you spend 2 years learning it and paying the price when you mess up. Inexpensive experience is saying, hey, Nick did that really well or really poorly.
Yeah.
I'm going to make an adjustment on what I'm planning to do.
Yeah. I love the way you put that too. I hadn't thought about the inexpensive experience versus expensive. Yeah, I mean, I love reading just biographies too, and learning about people's lives. I think you can learn a lot, from mistakes that other people have made, and learn from what made them successful in what they do.
Yeah, it's all rewiring the mind. The same way you go to the gym and it's rewiring your movement pattern, or anyone that golfs. I played baseball, so the idea of a swing, I actually went and got a swing assessment. It did not go as well as I would have hoped, but those are all neural pathways that your mind has grooved. So every movement that you take and have, if you've done it for years and years and years, that's a freeway. If you're trying to pick up a new habit, that neural pathway is a goat path. And in times of stress, you are going to default to what you know. So you have to train yourself in low stress environments to do something and turn that goat path into a dirt path, into a gravel road, into a 2-lane highway, into a freeway, while also not going the route of the freeway and letting that disintegrate eventually into a goat path. But the mental thought processes that you have and the movement patterns, movement quality that you have or don't have is all neural pathways, and it can all be changed. That's the concept of neuroplasticity. But the way that that stuff changes is by having different thoughts that are going to remap how you think. And that's why for me,
Yeah.
mental performance is so important, because until you reroute the routes that you take within your mind, you're always going to default to the training, nutrition, recovery, financial habits that you've had that got you to
Yeah.
the spot you're at.
I think we touched on this earlier in this episode, or it might have been last, in phase one, but just the concept of identifying yourself as someone who is successful, and encompassing that and embodying that mindset of, you are a six-figure income earner, and doing the things that a figure income earner would do. And I think a lot of people fall in the trap, especially if you grow up poor, grow up, lower class, with not a lot of opportunity. I think a lot of people fall in the trap of not being able to get out of the class that they are so familiar with, and they embody that lower class mindset of like, oh, I don't know what it's like to live a middle class lifestyle or something like that, and therefore they feel like they're just destined to be where they're currently at.
Man, that's so huge. That again, that's a 10-part series in and of itself. But that's where, if you wanted to do something today, identify someone that you know, identify a podcast, a book that maybe not know them, but start to create this circle. Your network is your net worth, right? Your
Hmm.
circle of 5 friends. They don't have to be friends, right? There was a time when I was really trying to start my business and work on my health, where I would talk to like 2 or 3 people, a life coach, a couple friends. I got really small and narrow, and then I listened to podcasts and books. So those
Hmm.
those 5 things that you're getting as inputs mentally might be for people that you don't know, right? And obviously, you have your friends and your family, and you're not just going to abandon them, but these things can all change by changing the inputs that are coming in. Because you're totally right. The environment you grow up in, if you grow up at a Pizza Hut, man, that's going to be tough to avoid some Pizza Hut, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you got to start to change what is coming in so you can change what is coming out.
Exactly. I mean, the top performers in business and in sports, they all have coaches around them. Steph Curry, I'm sure, has a shooting coach. LeBron James will have someone train him. The same, Tim Grover, trainer for Michael Jordan, Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant. I mean, those were all, elite athletes, by themselves, but they still were humble enough to have a trainer tell them what to do and what was best for them. They knew that they couldn't be the best in that. They needed to hire people around, and whether, just mental coaching too, helping them perform in the clutch, being able to make that jumper when they needed to.
Yeah. Tim Grover, I think, is working with Russell Wilson. So for Seahawks fans in Seattle, hopefully that's a good sign for a Super Bowl. That aside, the couple podcasts ago I had on Pam Owens, and she was talking about golf. She works with a lot of pro golfers. They will have a swing coach, a trainer, a mobility coach, someone who does their nutrition and looks at like their recovery. And obviously, no one here is in the PGA. If you're listening and you're in the PGA, hit me up. We'll have you on the podcast. But there's so many things to get help with. And as you grow, right, you want to delegate that so that you can get an expert's opinion on what it is that you want to do so that you can then go take your attention and focus onto the other things that really matter to you. Because you absolutely can go and research and learn everything that we're talking about, right? So the things you're talking about, like the Vanguard VTI, that's on the internet. Someone's said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't have the time and energy to go and do that, right? There's workout plans online, or you can go and read really dense nutrition books, right? Or the research. But you want to go spend time with your friends and your family and like do what you enjoy and put that stuff on autopilot. Buy back some time.
Yeah. Two most important resources, time and your attention. Use them wisely.
And lumber. Right now, lumber's very expensive.
Oh, yeah. Lumber too. Yeah.
All right. Now I'm hitting jokes. Dude, phase 2, low hanging fruit. This has been really good. And I'm excited for the next one, which is going to be common pitfalls. And if you Dogecoin kids or your keto cats,
crypto millionaires,
you'll want to listen to that one because we'll have common pitfalls and how to avoid them on the next section. But you can go to both of our websites, elementalcoachingproject.com, to download the PDF. Nick, what's your URL?
onedayadvice.com.
onedayadvice.com, and then our social media channels as well. Thank you for listening or watching this on YouTube. And we'll catch you guys next time on the 3rd episode, avoiding the common pitfalls of your health and wealth. Nick, thanks for the time.
Thank you.